Good afternoon. Still answering, that's a good sign. Excellent. My name's Shuvo, and I'm a director in our branding business. Been with Google for about 6 years, and in that time been working with a number of different industries, and more recently trying to get to grips with the automotive industry as well. My job is to finish this afternoon by taking you from the what to the how and talk about driving change. We spend a lot of these conferences talking about what you can do, what digital platforms can do for you, what are the great ideas, what are the changes that you should make. But I wanted to make sure that we don't forget the how, because you're all going to go back to your offices and sit back down in your own organizations, and then the first question is, yeah, but how do I do that? Where do I start? How does one get this kind of thing done? And this is a big question, right? So all of us are on a journey of driving digital change. And I'd like to... oh, you okay? So challenged by the journey of digital change. It was overwhelming. Have a good afternoon. See you later. So just to start this session off, I'd like to do a live survey. This is not an energizer. This is an actual real survey, but it'll require your participation. So if I could get you to stand up for me for a moment. OK, I'd like to raise one hand above your head like this. OK. This hand is now the needle of a dial, right? The needle of a dial. And you're currently pointing at 5. And I'd like you to move your hand over to my right, your left, like this. My right, your left. That wall, the one I'm pointing at. Make your hand point in the same direction as mine. Right, got it? Right, that's a 0. OK, come back to a 5. Very good. And then could you move over to a 10? Got it? OK, 0, 5, 10. Excellent. Stay standing. Stay standing. You can put your arm down for a second. Let me tell you the meaning of the dial. Right, 0 means my organization, or the one that I'm working with, we're OK. We kind of have a similar model as we've always used. We do a bit of digital on the side. We bolt it on. We pay lip service to it. We do a bit of digital. 10 is we design for digital. This is my life. Right? This is everything we do starts with digital content. When we do a media plan, it starts with digital at the heart. It starts with digital content. When I do something with a dealer, it starts with digital content. Everything is designed around the digital experience. If you cut me open, we're totally digital. Oh my God, right? So that's 10. Right? So you're somewhere from a 0 to a 10. After 3, I'd like you to point on your dial roughly where you would say you are on this journey of sort of digitization, shall we call it? OK, so after 3, 1, 2, 3. We've got some zeros. We've got, there's lots of 5s. There's lots of halfways. There's a few, looks like 6s or 7s. Is anyone over, right the way over? Not quite. OK, right, you can put your hands down. And sit down. Thank you. So thank you for being my live participative survey. Probably more consistent than I thought it was going to be. It was a lot of halfways, but still a mixed bag. And you know what? That's pretty typical. Regardless of industry that we work with, that journey from 0 to 10, everyone's on that journey, and it's pretty typical. But it's not an easy thing to do, is it? It's not like we can all go back to our offices the next day and say, right, I saw that stuff in the Google conference, and I'm just going to call up my agency. I'm going to grab my digital manager. We're just going to make it happen. And in 6 months' time, it shall be so, if only that were the case. So what I wanted to do is share with you a few examples and observations and insights that we've had across a range of organizations, actually largely not automotive, ones which we've worked with and had the pleasure of being able to get close enough to see what has helped them drive digital change. And along the way, there have been a few things which we've observed that seem to make the difference. So I'm going to talk to you about mission. I'm going to talk to you about processes. I'm going to talk to you about people, skills, targets. Going to talk a little bit about culture and finally ambition. So let me start with mission. Little story from a totally another industry. You all know Johnson & Johnson, J&J? Yep. Make Calpol, make Johnson's Baby, all of these types of brands, Nicorette. And about 4 or 5 years ago, they were really struggling. They were in a situation where the likes of Procter & Gamble and Unilever and L'Oreal and these other big consumer goods companies were beating them in the market. They were struggling for market share. And the managing director for UK and Northern Europe sort of looking at this business and thinking, what can I do? What can I do with this business to fix it? And they looked at all of the different options. They looked at supply chain. They said, well, can we beat our competition on supply chain? No, actually, we don't have the scale, the infrastructure. We're a bit rubbish in supply chain. Can we beat them on retailer power? No, we probably don't have the scale there either. Can we beat them on media spend? Not really, because they outspend us 5 to 1. So what are we going to do? You know, it's going to be really, really tough. The conclusion was we have to be smarter with our marketing, and at that point, smarter with marketing meant more digital, smarter digital. So in other words, they reached the conclusion very rapidly that becoming they then defined a mission to become the best digital consumer goods company. So in other words, it was about making digital mission critical. This wasn't just about doing some cool marketing. This wasn't just about being at the cutting edge of some trends. This was about how do we deliver real competitive advantage in this industry versus our competition for the entire business, and that had to be through digital. So that's why digital became mission critical for the entire business for J&J. Another example, we had a lady called Connie Culture. She's the VP for Customer Experience for Lego, the Lego company, globally. A few years ago, they had an incident with Lego Mindstorms. Anyone know about Mindstorms, the robotics bit of Lego? A few geeks in the room, there's one person. But basically, there's a particular range in Lego called Mindstorms, and they basically allow you to build a robot and program the robot, and you build it out of Lego. It's very cool if you're into that kind of thing. And a bunch of their consumers, a bunch of their very, very avid Lego fans, they hacked into the Lego Mindstorms server, which keeps all of the code that drives the robots and things, and they messed about with it so that they could make the robots do whatever they wanted to. So this was a huge shock to the Lego company because it meant that basically someone was messing with their brand. They were actually messing with the actual product. And they faced this issue where they had to decide, does Lego become an enemy of its own customers and actually say, right, we're going to sue you, our customers, for breaking into our systems, or do we embrace it and say, hey, what you're doing with our code and with our robots is really cool, and why don't you help us to build it? Fortunately, they took the latter opinion, and they embraced it. And as a result, they actually shifted the entire mission of the company. And rather than being a company about selling bricks, they became a company, they talked about inspiring and developing the builders of tomorrow. So this was a much bigger ambition, but it was an ambition that had to be powered by digital technology because it was about socializing the brand. When you talk to Lego, they will say to you that the Lego company owns the trademark, but the consumers own the brand. So in other words, they almost redefined who they were. Based on this experience, they kind of redefined their mission, and suddenly digital technology became mission critical. Two completely different examples, J&J, Lego, but the point is that digital technology became mission critical. So thinking back on what you've heard this morning, or this afternoon rather, hopefully it's evident that the decision-making process in the automotive industry, regardless of whether you're talking about buying a new car, a used car, or service, whatever it might be, this decision-making process is incredibly digital. You know, my assertion to you would be, surely digital has now become mission critical. So that has a lot of implications. If digital becomes mission critical, what does that mean next? So let me go on to talk about the next point. The next point is about processes. Sounds a bit mundane, but could be quite powerful. So think about what happens when, you've seen some good examples of videos today. And what happens if one of your videos does much better than you think it ever will? Suddenly there are not just hundreds or thousands, but hundreds of thousands of people watching. Or what happens, and that's a great opportunity to take advantage of. Or what happens if, let's say there's, God forbid, a product recall, and then suddenly you need to react to that. So these days, lots of companies are having to be much more nimble, and that requires processes which are much more always on and much more iterative. Let me try and give you another example to illustrate. You saw the Dove Sketches example earlier? Yeah, who's actually seen the Dove Sketches video? Hands up. About a third of you. So for those of you who haven't seen it, Dove, you all know, real beauty, women, self-esteem, you're kind of familiar with the equity of that brand. And their latest video is 3 minutes long, it's fantastic, it's beautifully done. Women go and see a police sketch artist. Sounds odd, I know, but the sketch artist, he's asked to sketch the woman based purely on how she describes herself. He never sees her, just like a police sketch artist would do. Then they introduce the woman to a stranger, they meet for 5 minutes, the stranger goes and speaks to the sketch artist, and then the stranger describes the same person to the same artist, and he draws her again. So he basically draws the same person through two different people's eyes. And there's a beautiful moment, as you can imagine. The killer moment of the video is when the woman stands in front of her two sketches, and she's quite dowdy in one, and she's just beautiful in the other. And literally it brings some women to tears, because they sort of suddenly realize how different they see themselves compared to how the world sees them. Really powerful, really insightful, beautifully done. But it's 3 minutes long. And this has had millions of views now. So the reason to tell this story is because that video was created by a creative agency in Brazil. It was posted on YouTube originally by a team in the US. And they didn't really put too much investment behind it, but within about 2 days, it hit 1 million views already. They never guessed that that was going to happen. They never would have known. But what they did do, which was smart, and we have been encouraging Unilever to do this for a while, is they called us up and said, hey, you've been encouraging us to be nimble and to think big, and could we, do you think, ever get this video to hit 1 billion views? And we're like, 1 billion views? What are you talking about? We're like, well, you're not Gangnam Style, but we did say, actually, it's a great video, and tens of millions, maybe even 100 million plus, we could help you to do that. And this is the nimble bit, this is the process bit. They were able to reorientate their organization and their budgets across countries and using kind of global resources as well, and suddenly put a few $1 million behind that particular video in weeks. So across the following month or so, it went from a couple of million to 130 million, okay? 130 million. It's now the single biggest viewed brand ad, you might say. After Evian Babies was the last one, which did really, really well. So it's hit 130 million, and about half of those were completely earned views. Okay, so they paid for about half, they got about half effectively for free. So great value for money, but they were able to do this because they were nimble enough to suddenly shift in that way. So big shift, think about that from a planning point of view. The process that they would need to employ to ensure that they could be that nimble to shift the budget around, etc. Another quick example of being nimble with process. How many of you recall the Old Spice man from a couple of years ago? That very famous marketing case study. Excellent, good. So the Old Spice man, he was the man your man could smell like. Very, very funny video, Super Bowl ad in the US. And once he became so popular, and then there were lots and lots of people talking about him, there was so much social commentary about him on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube comments, etc., that the creative agency and the client at P&G, they decided to see whether they could react to those comments. And what they did is they created, over 3 days, 180 videos of the Old Spice man actually talking back to the people who had commented, often talking back to celebrities. Those videos themselves got them another 100 million views. So really loads of topspin on this entire campaign. So how do you create 180 videos in 3 days? That's a phenomenal thing for an organization to do, particularly a really processed organization like P&G. They completely broke down their content creation process. Their team flew over to us about 2 years ago and they told us the story, and they said that on that weekend, it was a long weekend, 3 days, and they brought together, they put in the same room in Weeden & Candy, the creative agency, they put together a social listening team who were constantly pulling in the feeds from all the different social platforms. They sat them right next to the copywriters from the creative agency and said, here's something someone said, come up with a cool idea for a video. And the copywriters were taking that on, and it was like a production line. Let's turn that into a script. And then that script went off to the next team, which was the actual production team, the director, the camera crew, etc. Isaiah was there, and they would film the video. And then that video would go off to the legal team who were there to look at it and make sure they didn't screw up and annoy anyone from a legal point of view and make sure they got the appropriate sign-offs. And on occasion, there was the brand manager popping in to check that it was OK. He couldn't actually approve all 180. So very, very different paradigm of how content is created. They completely threw their existing content creation processes out the window so that they could do that. So the reason I'm going to make those 2 points is in both cases, revisiting process is critical to how you shift an organization and how you go on this digital journey. One last organization, because I've talked about 2 very, very big ones there. So, one's Unilever, one's Procter & Gamble. Who's heard of Aura Brush? Anyone heard of Aura Brush? 1 or 2? OK. So Aura Brush, go and Google it or look for it on YouTube. It is a brush that scrapes the gunk off your tongue. Nice, huh? Right. And it reduces bad breath. There's bacteria on your tongue, and it's really not very nice. But the best way to reduce bad breath is to scrape this skunk off. So there's a doctor who's got experience in sort of medical and oral hygiene, whose idea was to create this. He created a patent. He wanted to sell it. He put it in front of just one guy, right? And he wanted to build a business around this, put it in front of lots of consumer goods companies, and they just kind of went, it'll never fly. There's not an audience for it. He put it in front of a marketing school as well, a university academy, and asked them for their opinions. Lots of people said, yeah, it'll never fly. But one guy from this university said, well, actually, there's 8% of the audience who might be interested. And actually, if you could use digital media that would allow you not to pay for the other 92%, but only to pay for the ones that worked, then you could still make a business out of that, surely. So they got together and they invented a very simple YouTube video which sold the product, put it up, made sure that they responded to any searches for things to do with oral hygiene, bad breath, or even funny videos. It was quite a funny video. And they went from 0 to about 20 million views. Off of that, it linked through to an e-commerce platform. And now they have a business. They're distributed in Walmart, they're distributed in major retailers, and they've even launched now the Aura Pup, which is the same sort of thing, but for dogs. Anyway, but it's a multi-billion-dollar business now. And that's a business model that was created because of digital platforms. It was a totally different paradigm that no other consumer goods company would have taken on. So these are all examples, both big and small, of revisiting process and changing for the digital world. So I talked about mission, talked about process. I want to say a few words about people and skills. Another example, here's Cadbury's example. There's a guy called Jerry Deakin, who's head of social media at Cadbury's, is a bit of a legend in the social media circles. And he arrived at Cadbury's and has really shaken things up. Cadbury's probably has one of the biggest Google Plus followers of any brand in the world today. They have about 2.5 million followers at latest count. And this is all driven by really the vision of one guy. This is the importance of the person. When you have something that's really new, that is a platform that you don't quite get yet, when you just need to kind of get over the hump. And you probably heard lots of things today where some of them you go, yeah, I could do that. And there's others which you listen to today where you go, I don't know where to start. I really don't know where to start. That's where people are so important. Finding the right guy. Jerry came into Cadbury's And he brought a new spirit of scrappiness, you might say, about being a little bit entrepreneurial. Examples, come Easter time, obviously there's a certain group of people who love cream eggs. And everyone talks about, how do you eat yours? Is anyone passionate about how they eat their cream egg? I don't know. So how you eat yours, there's a particular group of people in the UK who are really into talking about that. So obviously they put out a little invitation to a community who care about eating cream eggs at Easter time, and that pulls in an audience and a whole bunch of followers to the Google Plus community. Separately, completely differently, they also thought it would be quite smart to leverage Google's own community. So they knew full well that there's a guy called Vic Gundotra who runs Google Plus globally. He's based in Mountain View in our headquarters over there. He's a bit of another sort of legend in his own industry, so he has like 1 million followers across Google Plus globally, 1 million plus now. So when Cadbury's got onto Google Plus, one of the first things they did is, as a way of saying thank you, they created a little, well, it's quite a big chocolate bar, about this big, customized, and instead of the Cadbury's logo, it said Vic Gundotra in Cadbury's style writing. They sent it to Vic in Mountain View. And of course, the first thing he does is he takes a snap of it and he posts it to his 1 million followers, right? Very smart PR move. And lo and behold, a few 100,000 extra followers come onto Cadbury's list. And they do this again and again and again. Rebecca Adlington was one of the swimmers that they were associated with in the Olympics. They did a hangout with her, and then that became new content appealing to a whole bunch of new people in their community. So again and again and again, Jerry and his sort of slightly crazy, scrappy way of doing things brought a new discipline into the organization. It's nothing, no one at Cadbury's would have had the experience or the sort of foresight to do it. So getting the right person to get you over the hump. Having got over the hump, I talked about people and skills. So it's all very well getting one person who can be a change agent, but then what happens next? What happens when that skill needs to become mainstream? So back to our Johnson & Johnson example, you remember Juan Jose Gonzalez, he's kind of like on this mission for J&J to become the most digital company in the world. And he mandated that if we're going to do this, I need my entire marketing organization to build their digital IQ to a much, much higher level. And this wasn't just about, let's go on a digital boot camp for 2 days or 3 days. This was, I'm going to put every single person in my marketing organization on 24 trainings per year and keep that going for about 3 or 4 years. So that's probably the most aggressive piece of training commitment that we have ever seen. I mean, if you think about your own organizations and you think about how much time do you spend learning about new stuff? I mean, it's by the way, fantastic that you're here. I mean, the fact that you're here and the fact that you've taken the opportunity to get out of the office and do this kind of thing is brilliant. But how much time overall do you and your organization spend about learning new stuff? And think about what it takes to learn new things. Think about what you did at school, at university. Think about how you came to be good at the jobs that you're doing at the moment. Was it because you went on a course for 2 days and lo and behold, bang, you could do it? Probably you spent a lot of time doing a lot of training or doing it again and again and again. And if that doesn't already naturally exist inside your organization, making an intervention to create it. So that's what Juan Jose did for the marketeers at J&J. So massively important to invest in skills and ask yourself, like, to what extent have you done that? So last couple of points were just around targets and leadership. So setting targets, as mundane as it sounds, is something we've observed can make a huge, huge difference again. Another example to illustrate, you'll know Diageo, sort of people who make Guinness and Smirnoff and all of those types of brands. So they have beautiful ads. You've seen the Guinness ads, yeah? They're just gorgeous. The 4 horses and they're like great things come to those who wait, and beautiful, iconic advertising. And their marketeers are incredibly proud of their ability to create beautiful content and copy. But ironically, even though they spend loads of investment in these beautiful ads, and they look great on telly, but there's actually very little engagement with them online, which seems remarkable in this day and age. So Diageo's global CMO recently just changed roles with a guy called Andy Fennell, famous marketeer himself. He was looking at this and he said to his global marketing leadership team, this has to change. Come on, guys, it's the 21st century now. This is, it's great copy, but we need to change this. And he simply said, right, every time you invest in a piece of content like that, I'm expecting 5 million YouTube views at least. Just mandated. You just have to do it. The point was that that's a target which changes behavior, because there's good targets and there are bad targets. And targets which change behavior are the ones which will help move from the 0 to the 10. Juan Jose, our J&J example, he just used a simple spend target. Here's my media. What percentage of that is going on digital? From 2008 to 2012, they went from 4 to 8, then to 16, then to 25, and now to 30%. And he trusted that his organization will be smart enough not to be stupid with the money. But he still said, right, I need to set that target because I need to find a target that will change behavior. Now, all of this doesn't happen unless there's a cultural shift as well. And hopefully you've heard a lot by now about things like failing fast and being nimble and leading by example. So those are all things which are important to drive culture. But where does that come to life? So one more J&J example. Every quarter, bringing everyone together to look at everything they've done digitally, mandated again, and to do a proper review, not just best practice sharing for best practice sharing's sake, but because they needed to have every person in the organization pick apart others' experience and say, well, what did you do in that campaign? Why did it work? Why didn't it work? What would you do differently? So that kind of best practice sharing, as I say, it's not just sharing for sharing's sake. It becomes mission critical. If you're going to move fast, the companies that do that kind of exercise and allow their failures to be as public as their successes and allow their failures to be interrogated as deeply as their successes, those are the organizations that we see moving fastest. And at the pace that technology is moving, as you've seen, at the pace that consumers are moving, as you've seen, if you're not moving fast, then you will get left behind. So, how much effort do you put into that? So these are the things which shift culture. My final point is about ambition. So we started off talking about the dial from 0 to 5 to 10. Now you could leave this room and say, right, I'm on a 3. In the next 6 months, I'm going to move to a 5. Or you could leave this room and say, I'm on a 3, and in the next 12 months, I'm going to move to a 15. I'm going to redefine what success really looks like. I'm going to be the leader in this space, and everyone's going to be looking at me. And I would wager that any one organization that chooses to take that ambition will be the one that actually succeeds and wins in the market. Now, what does that really mean? I'd like to find an example to show you an organization that's thinking that way. And actually, I think that the best example I could share with you is right here at Google. And we've been inspired actually internally by a new part of Google called Google X, which you may have heard about. They've introduced new language into their company. They've started talking about moonshot thinking, which is about going beyond the incremental and going towards things that change the world. So I just wanted to give you a flavor of how that feels, how that looks, and then we'll wrap up. So hopefully we've got a video that we can play.
The actual moonshot is wonderful, inspirational, poetic, beautiful, involved great technical challenges, genuine heroism. It brought the world together. But think about the Polynesian islander on the dugout canoe, deciding one day they were going to go that way. No one had ever been that way before. No one even knew if there was anything that way before. It was amazing. and it changed the world.
People can set their minds to magical, seemingly impossible ideas, and then through science and technology, bring them to reality. And that then sets other people on fire, that other things that look impossible might be accomplishable.
Galileo is such a hero, you know, in thinking big, and what he represents to me is both curiosity and wonder that humanity had, that he had, that pushed him and drove himself to invent and work on the first telescopes that allowed us to see the moon, and here we are.
These aviation pioneers were figuring it out as they went. No one really knew how to build an airplane, right? No one knew how to fly an airplane. It was amazing and crazy and wonderful, and they wanted to explore.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there.
There's so many challenges in the world, and you can feel daunted by that, you know, and sort of oppressed by that, or you kind of say, how might we think differently about this?
Everyone else in the world is working on that next 10%. If you can be the one that delivers that 10 times improvement, you have a chance to really change things.
If you want cars to run at 50 miles per gallon, fine, you can retool your car a little bit. But if I tell you it has to run on a gallon of gas for 500 miles, you have to start over.
You need a lot of courage in this work, and you need a lot of persistence. One of the things that's really critical is not only having the courage to keep trying every day or thinking big, even if you don't really 100% believe it's possible, like you might think this might be possible, have the courage to try. That's how the greatest things have happened.
You don't spend your time being bothered that you can't teleport from here to Japan, because there's a part of you that thinks it's impossible. Moonshot thinking is choosing to be bothered by that.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Humanity's progress has been a series of amazing, audacious things, from the very small and personal up to the great, big, and grand. And we are a species of moonshots. And to me, that's like the really amazing, poetic, and inspirational thing.
I think our ambitions are a glass ceiling on what we can accomplish.
When you find your passion, you're unstoppable. You can make amazing things happen. It's been true through all of history.
I believe in the human spirit, and I believe that there are always going to be crazy people who will get out of bed one morning and say, you know what? I think I can build a space elevator, and let's go and do it. But I think that if we become afraid to take these great big risks, we stop inspiring people. We stop achieving things. And the biggest nightmare scenario is that we won't have what it takes to solve the really big challenges.
When Kennedy said that we would put a man on the moon, it's about the fact that he said, we don't know how to do this yet, and we're gonna do it anyway. And that sends chills up everybody's spine. Because if that happens, what couldn't we do?
Good morning, Steve. Hey, Nathaniel, how are you? Doing just great. Go ahead, Steve.
Auto driving.
Here we go. Away we go. Look, Ma, no hands.
No hands anywhere.
No hands, no feet. No hands, no feet. No nothing. 95% of my vision is gone. I'm well past legally blind. You lose your timing in life, everything takes you much longer. There are some places that you cannot go, there are some things that you really cannot do. Where this would change my life is to give me the independence and the flexibility to go the places I both want to go and need to go when I need to do those things.
Many people don't realize this, but the majority of the world is not connected to the internet. How do we get cost-effective, inexpensive, and reliable connectivity to the remaining 5 or 6 billion people in the world who don't have it?
Yeah, we can be up in an hour. Okay.
Project Loon is the idea that we could create a network of high-altitude balloons that float about 20 kilometers up, and through this network we can give the internet to the entire world. We're using the sunlight, we're using the wind, we're using all of these things to build this network in the sky.
Project Loon is working to bring the technologies of access to everyone on the planet.
Okay, Glass, record a video.
This is it. We're on in 2 minutes.
Okay, Glass, hang out with the Flying Club.
Holy sh**, that is awesome.
Okay, class, record a video.
After this bridge, first exit. Well, let's see. It's beautiful.
So that is moonshot thinking, and just a few examples of the amazing, amazing things that can happen when human beings start putting that thinking into their own daily endeavors. And I guess I just wanted to close this piece by saying, if digital is mission critical for you, what would be your moonshot? What would be your 15? What would that mean to you? And what would that mean in terms of people and process and culture and targets and all those things that we've just been talking about? If you were moonshotting your way on that journey from 0 to 10 and beyond, rather than just incrementing your way, what might that mean if you thought like these guys? Because the people behind these projects are no different from us. They just applied a different mentality. So I hope that's encouragement for you to go forth and do amazing things on your digital journey. Thank you very much.